Hi, hey, you probably said to yourself, I have a security I'm interested in. I don't know what system or indicators to use with it. I wish I could custom make a system for that security, but I have no programming skills. You don't need programming skills to do this because you can do it. And I'm going to tell you right now how to do it. Hi, Greg Lewis, MetaStock Software. Hey, if you've been trading along, you understand that securities have their own little quirky ways about responding to the market. Not all securities respond to the market in the same way, of course, or we wouldn't need things like MetaStock. To overcome this, we try to find a system that works well with that security under certain conditions, and that sometimes can be difficult to do. To overcome that, a lot of people will make a system that works specifically with the security. But in order to do that, they have to be able to program, and that can take skill and time and considerable effort. Well, now with MetaStock's ICE, you can program a custom system to work with the security that you're interested in, and that's what we're going to talk about right now. All right, before we go into ICE, the software, let's go ahead and take a moment to look at the background and the development of ICE so we can better understand where it's coming from. ICE, it turns out, is an acronym. It means Indicator, Categorization, and Election. ICE was developed by Adaptic, which was headed up by John Slauson. John Slauson actually worked here at MetaStock for about 12 years, and I consider a personal friend of mine. It turns out, in addition to being a talented technical analyst and programmer, he's actually a pretty swell guy, too. One of the things Adaptics understood going into the development of ICE is that people are creative by nature. And when people are part of the process, they become more engaged. And in terms of trading, they become more confident in the trade analysis and in their subsequent trade. Okay, another thing that Adaptic took into account when they produced ICE was what they call the technical indicator pyramid. And basically, it's just a way of saying there are certain things that should be really involved with any system or indicator that you're using for a stock. At its base is a broad market forecast, which of course is very important when trying to predict price, as is a stock's individual support and resistance. But on top of that, they had four things that they called triggering indicators, and they included a stock's volume, a stock's velocity, a stock's verticality, and a stock's volatility. Now, I think John just wanted to use 4 V's to make it sound more memorable. Velocity really is just the momentum of a stock, and verticality is just a stock's trend. Another thing you need to understand about the developers of ICE was to them diversity is key. Having a system that relies too much on one of these 4 things, velocity, volume, verticality, or volatility, isn't that effective. They pointed to a weatherman as a good example. A weatherman might use a thermometer and a dew point indicator and a barometer to tell you a good forecast of the weather. They would never just use 3 thermometers, and that's sort of the mentality behind this diversity. To that end, they used 81 testable systems in ICE. And these 81 systems are divided more or less evenly into these 4 different indicator categories. For instance, in velocity, you'll see things like RSI and stochastic. In volume, you'll see things like volume oscillator. In verticality, moving average. And in volatility, Bollinger bands, Keltner channels, etc. At a high level, this is how ICE works. You're basically at your home on your computer using MetaStock, and you do an initial test. Once you've run that initial test, you send the results of that to the ICE server. The ICE server does not look like a robot, but a picture of a box isn't that interesting, so I called it. So I put a picture of a robot there, and in fact we call it the ICE bot, but in fact it's just a server. All right, after the ICE bot processes that information, it sends results back to you in an email. You put that email in a refining test on your computer and send the results back to the ICE server, and then the ICE server processes that again and sends it back to you in the form of a final system. And so then you have a system built specifically, again, for the security that you're interested in. Another thing included with ICE are Intellistops. John says, let losses die quickly, play defense first, let profits live long, and strive for average profits that outpace average losses by a factor of 2. So basically, smart stops are important. And the way he does this is he says three market conditions cause an Intellistop to trail tighter to the lows, which is important. A decrease in price volatility and or 2 indications of price stalling by a relative abundance of long upper shadows over the recent past. And finally, strong up volatility will cause buy Intellistops to tighten. Strong down volatility will cause short Intellistops to tighten. So essentially, the Intellistops reevaluate where the stop should be after every period so that they're moving along with it. It's a trailing stop, but it's not just a stop, it's an Intellistop. All right, let's go ahead and take a moment to look at ICE in action. Okay, so here we are in MetaStock. A few things up front. One, I'm not going to go a lot, this isn't going to be a deep dive into MetaStock about how to do system testing and explorations and charting. If you want to know more about that, I've included links below for resources for that. As well, you may have noticed I'm doing this on a Macintosh computer. You can run MetaStock on a Mac, but it does require that you run Windows. In my case, I'm doing it with Parallels, a program called Parallels. There's also a program called Boot Camp that you can do that with. I'll provide information below about how you can run MetaStock on a Mac. Finally, the security we're looking at today is 1-800-FLOWERS. No particular reason. I'm not suggesting you buy this security. It just was a random example I pulled up so I can show you how this ICE system works to build a custom system for the security that you're interested in. So right up front, the first thing you need to do is pick a period of this security that gives you an equal representation of upward, downward, and sideways movement. And the way you do that is through a system, I should say expert advisor, that is provided by ICE. And you attach it. And right away you can see it shows these little indicators down here. There's an end date, and way out here somewhere is a beginning date. So this is the period we're going to be looking at specifically when we run our tests. Now that's kind of hard to work out, so the easiest way to do that is to go to the expert advisor commentary, and it'll tell you very specifically the most recent simulation period is from 4/8/14 to 7/18/17. And in fact, I have printed that stuff out. So I should point out that along the way you can either jot down notes or print things out. I've just printed things out. It just made it easier. All right, so now we have the period established that we need to run the tests on. Let's go ahead and run those tests. For that, we use the system tester. In the case of ICE, there are 81 systems, as you recall, and they're all categorized into 4 separate categories. So you'll see here all these tests, everything that has a little caret on top of it, or in front of it, that says velocity, verticality, volume, or volatility. See all those. And then you have to run them against the one security you want to test. So fortunately, I don't have to select all of them. I can just shift-click and select all of them at the same time. Shift-click. Yeah, you just have to know how to shift-click. So then I'm going to run them against 1-800-FLOWERS. Now, if you know about system testing in MetaStock, you know that we encourage you to use real-world system parameters. And that's no different really in ICE. There's a few things that the developers of ICE ask you to select when you're doing system tests, but essentially you want it to be how you'd normally run a test. In my case, maybe $10,000 equity, or is that 100,000? 100,000 with 25% available equity, 3% interest on your money, 8% exit and entry transaction costs. So, again, we're not going to go too much into a system test and how that works right now, but that's what we're going to run this system test with. Another thing that's important is to make sure that the dates are what we determined they should be previously, and I think I've already set it for that. It should be 4/8/2015. So 4/8/2015, not 2016. Yeah. Turns out typing is also an important skill when you're using a computer, and then to 7/18/17. So 7/18/2017. So that's the period we're going to test against. And I'm going to go ahead and start the system test, except I'm not going to start the system test because it takes about 5 to 15 minutes depending on your processor, and I don't want to make you sit here and wait for that. I've already run the test in preparation for this, and I'll show you the report now. Oh, and also, if you're familiar with MetaStock, this is not something you typically use. Well, we have down here what we call the ICE Performance Viewer. And I've already run this test, so I'm going to open up a previous one. The test I ran previously. Now, what you see here in a tabular form, you're not probably accustomed to seeing, like I said, in a system report, but basically it shows you all 81 systems and times 4, because it ran multiple versions of each system. And this is a good time to explain that. So basically it ran all 81 systems against that security, but during that time it ran different variations of those systems, different what he calls optimizations, and those produced optimization figures. So for instance, if we search on, I should say sort on expectancy, and by the way, expectancy is just another word for expected net gain, I should say net profit. I'll include exactly what that is in the details below. So right now we're going to go ahead and sort on expectancy to find the most successful test. And we have to find the most successful test from one of each categories. So right at the top we have verticality, which is the parabolic SAR. Then we have to go down a few to find velocity, which is CCI standard. And then you have to go down even farther to find the next one, which is volume. And then even farther down to find the last one, which in this case was volatility. And I've printed them out here just to make it easy. And I've taken note in each case, I should show you here, it tells you the optimizations that you need to use to proceed with this test. And the way you proceed with this test is you take this information and you go to adaptic.net and enter the information into a form. And we're going to do that right now. Okay, here we are at adaptic.net. When you purchase the product, you log into this, I should say sign up for this website, and it has your information so it can email the results back to you. It first asks which symbol you're going to use. In our case, it was FLWS, flowers.com. .o. And then it says, okay, I need the information you got. In our case, we just did, I may have neglected to mention before, just a buy test. I didn't do both short and long. So we can ignore the sell information and just enter the buy information. And in this case, you'll see the first one's velocity, and it tells you, well, what test did it determine was the best for velocity? And in our case, that was CCI standard. So you click CCI standard, and then it asks for the optimizations, which variations were most successful, 10 and 150, I beg your pardon. All right, and then you click next. And the next, it says, well, what were the best optimizations for the verticality test? In our case, verticality was parabolic SAR, which you do the pull-down menu, and you say parabolic SAR, and you say what the parabolic SAR was, which was, in our case, 11, which is a arbitrary optimization of that test. Well, not arbitrary, it was specific to the results, but arbitrary in the number doesn't mean anything outside of that. And then volatility, again, deselect short and select what test was volatility. In our case, that test was envelope trading band. So you select envelope trading band, and the two criteria are 40 and 4, and you hit next. And then finally it asks for volume, which in our case was the price volume trend, which we select. And in our case that was 2 and 8. 2 and 8. Okay, and you select finish. When you're done, it says, okay, you're done. And what it's doing right now is sending that information to the iSpot. It takes anywhere between 3 and 15 minutes, perhaps, to get that information back. In my case, when I've run this test several times today, it took about 3 minutes. When I talked to support, they said it can take anywhere upwards of 15 minutes. If it takes more than an hour, you maybe want to call support. But typically, it's a fairly quick process. So let's go back to MetaStock. Now what happens is you receive the email, and then at that point you download an executable that you install on your computer, and that installs the subsequent test you need to run on it, in our case, 1-800-Flowers. So we deselect everything we ran the test on before, and you'll see the test right here. It says ICE Flowers 0 Step 1. You can see a previous test I did on Apple. So every time it loads a test, it names it the security that you ran that specific test on. And I'm going to select that and go ahead and run it against Flowers. And again, you want to use the same period and the same trade options that you used previously, and go start system test. Except that I'm not going to start system test again, because again, it'll take between 5 to 15 minutes depending on your processor, and rather than wait, I'll just open up that report. And I do that by once again going into this ICE Performance Viewer. And in this case, it'll open up the second report. Okay, now this is the refined test. These are the results that you need to give back to the ICE server. In our case, you'll see that this won't always be the case, but in this case, all the expectancies are exactly the same for all the different variations of the test. So as a secondary sorting mechanism, Adaptive says, well, you need to find those that have the optimizations that are most tightly grouped. And in this case, it's 4, 40, -50, and 4. So those are the bits of information we want to take back and put in the final test, which I neglected to write down earlier. It's 4, 40, -50, and 4. So now you go back to the ICE server, and you'll see this. 4, and you type in the 4 things that we just talked about: 40, -50, and 4. And you click Finish. Now you've sent that again to the Adaptive ICE server, and it will do a final process and send you a final executable, which you'll install on your computer, and then you can use for further analysis in MetaStock, which we're going to do right now. Here we are back in MetaStock and looking at the original security, which was 1-800-Flowers.com. Now what we have is a system that we can attach to it that's specifically designed for 1-800-Flowers, and that is, if I can see, the ICE FLWS Trade Manager, and we're going to go ahead and attach that. All right away you're going to see some buy and sell signals. Now, of course, we don't really know what exactly this test is. We just know it's a custom test that was made for the 1-800-Flowers. And you can see some buy and sell signals here and there. You know, you can see some more or less successful buy and sell signals. You know, buy, got a little bump here, got a little bump here, got out there. But you probably want to know, well, what's the system doing? How does this work? So to do that, we go ahead and go to the Expert Advisor and open the commentary. And right there it says, well, let's go ahead and actually go to buy signal. Right, so here it tells you the buy signal at the current bar, which in this case was 66216. We went back a ways on the chart. So it says for a stop order, you get in at 8.44. For a limit order, you get in at 8.74. For Intellistops, which we talked about earlier, you want to set trailing Intellistop for 7.56, and for short at 9.44. It also here gives you the weighting of the 4 different tests it used. Do you recall we used the CCI standard, the parabolic SAR, the envelope trading bands, and the price volume trend? Well, it gives you here the weighting it uses for your final test for each of these indicators. So that's great. Now you've got a custom built system that you can apply to the security that you're interested in. But now let's look over here. It doesn't currently offer a buy or sell signal. So what if you want to find something that's showing a buy or sell signal today? You know, we've just made this system very specific to flowers.com or 1-800-Flowers, but it's not showing anything today, and you might want to trade something today. Well, there's 2 other things that came along with that final system that you just installed with that final email. One was an Explorer, and one was a system tester. And that allows you to now take this system and run it against, let's say, the S&P 500 to find other securities that can work with that. And you're saying to yourself, wait a minute, we just developed a system for the security, and that's fine, but maybe you realize that a lot of securities will act in similar ways in the market, and this system could work with those other securities, and the way to find that out is with the Explorer, and we can do that right now. So this is the Explorer. It's called the ICE FLWS O Trade Filter, and we're going to go ahead and run it on the S&P 500, and we'll start that exploration now. Okay, so here we found 19 some odd securities that have a hit today based on the system that we just built. That's interesting. Of course, it means, hey, we have perhaps buy or sell, I think in this case, all buy opportunities. Well, you can tell they're all buy opportunities because there's a 1 on the buy column. We didn't test it for shorts. And you could go look at these one at a time to see which one looks best. But really the best thing you can do is throw these results back into a system test to find out of the system that we just did, which of these that had a hit today are going to have performed best over time. And that's what I'm going to do right now. Okay, so here we are in the system tester, and here's the system we want to run against, the ICE 1-800-Flowers Trade Verifier. Each time you produce a new system with this, if you haven't noticed already, it automatically adds the symbol for the security so you can keep the systems straight. And we're going to run that against the results of our last exploration, and go ahead and start that system test. And it shouldn't take too much time, but, well, there's already done. Okay, now this is what a more typical system test looks like rather than that very ICE-specific tabular view we were looking at before. And right here you can see we've got, if we sort of net profit, we've got some interesting stocks here that did well over that period. Right here we've got at the Hilton World Holdings Group at the top. If we look at that a little closer and go over the equity line, no, that's a promising stock. I mean, there are some drawbacks here, and there's some periods where it didn't do that well, but overall, it has a fairly upwardly mobile equity line. If we go back and check some of the other results, American Water Works, that had the second most and had 5 trades over that period. If we look at that, we can see, well, I'm sorry, we should probably go back here and just look at this. So just generally speaking, you can see how it performed profit-wise. You can see what its risk-reward index. You can see how many trades it took, how many longs, how many shorts. In this case, they were all longs because we didn't test against shorts. And here on the equity line, we can see that's not a bad equity line. That's very consistent over time, not a lot of drawback, consistently going up, and that's the kind of equity line we want to see. So let's say I want to see that system on this security, and that's what we're going to do right now. All right, so here's American Water Works, and let's go ahead and apply the system we did for Flowers, 1-800-Flowers. Okay, now I did mention there's a buy and sell opportunity today. You don't see that yet because it tells you to buy on the following day, as I recall from this system. So let's go ahead and open up the commentary. All right, the commentary says you've got a buy signal on the following day, cover all open short positions by, it's saying FLWS in this case, but of course we're looking now at American Water Works. It's telling you a stop order, it's telling you the limit order, it's telling you what the Intellistops are, and it gives you again the weighting of the system, which is essentially the same because it's the same system. So, and now you can see you've got a buy and sell opportunities for this particular security, which, by the way, I'm not telling you to buy or sell American Water Works ever. This is just for demonstration purposes. Okay, so what have we done? Well, we've said, hey, I'm interested in 1-800-Flowers.com. We made a custom-built system just for 1-800-Flowers.com, which you can use on 1-800-Flowers.com. But if you wanted to find something today, you've done that. You've gone ahead and done an exploration on that system for all of the S&P 500. You found some pretty promising results, one of which is right here. Again, not telling you to buy this. And it gives you more things to look at. And at this point, you might be saying to yourself, hey, Greg, how do I get myself that ICE add-on for MetaStock? And fortunately, I can tell you that right now. Okay, ICE is available for a one-time cost of $299. ICE is not a subscription product, it's a one-time purchase. It's yours forever to keep, and it will be used for ongoing versions of MetaStock. I should also remind you we have a 30-day guarantee for all of our non-subscription products. You try something out and you return it within 30 days, no questions asked, no problems if you don't want to keep it, which I'm sure you will want to keep it because it's awesome. How do you get it? Well, you call us up at 1-800-882-3040, or you chat with us at metastock.com sales chat, or you visit us at metastock.com. I can assure you that whoever answers the phone will be very knowledgeable about ICE and MetaStock generally and trading, and can be very, very helpful to you. All right, thank you so much for joining me today in this exploration of ICE and how it can help your trades. Hey, if you already have ICE or MetaStock, we'd love to hear about your experience. Negative or positive, please leave it in the feedback below. We're always looking for feedback to help us improve our product going down the line. Also, if you have any questions about MetaStock, don't hesitate to contact us. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, go ahead and check out our YouTube channel by selecting the button below, or just go to youtube.com/metastock. Thank you so much, and successful trading.